Today's YouTube video, we're going over the best settings for Warzone. Your Warzone settings can make a massive difference to your gameplay and really help you out or hurt you. So as always, if you enjoy, be sure to give it a like for the algorithm, subscribe with notifications turned on, and let's hop into it. All right, let's hop in here and break it all down for you guys. We're going to go through firstly the controller settings, since a lot of you guys are going to be, I assume, on controller like myself. I play with the PS5 controller here on PC. First thing I need to show you guys is basically going to be my edit button layout. So pretty much the only thing I have changed in here is I play on tactical flipped. I haven't mapped any of these buttons differently. I play on tactical, just because it's nice for slide canceling, stuff like that. And with movement being in Warzone 3 as opposed to Warzone 2, it's actually more prevalent than ever, more necessary than ever to actually play on tactical. Basically, you don't need to play on flipped, but for me, I play on flipped personally because I grew up playing on PS3, PS4, and I always use those top bumpers anyways. So for me, it just feels natural to be able to do that, and I do think you can kind of press those in faster than you would realistically your bottom triggers. So it is just one of those things. For me, it feels just natural, but you don't have to play on flipped, but tactical, I will say, is something you should be playing on. Now the bumper ping is going to be off. We don't really need that. Of course, this is my flip here, so that's why I have on tactical flipped. The stick layout preset is just on default. We don't really have to mess with that. My controller vibration, I know this sometimes gets some people, but I just leave this on. I just don't think it needs to be on or off. It just genuinely does not matter. It's not going to throw off your aim when it's on. For me, it feels natural because I've had it on for so many years that it feels kind of weird when I don't. So I just like to leave it on there. Kind of gives me that nice little physical feedback without really messing with me in any capacity. So I kind of like that. The trigger effect here, this is something that should always be off. As far as speaking like about physical feedback, I mean, the controller vibration is one thing, but having had the haptic trigger effects where it's going to like kind of put a threshold on pushing in a button or a trigger, that is totally unnecessary. That's cool for maybe like a single player story game or something like that. But for Call of Duty, which is a reactionary first-person shooter video game, you definitely don't want that. Anything that's going to slow you down, you definitely do not want. So we're going to keep that off. And of course, now I'm going to go down here. I'm going to take a look at this interesting category, which is going to be my dead zone. So I'm going to show you guys this. Basically, I could turn on my dead zone, like turn this on. And basically, the only stick that's going to move for me is my right stick, slightly behind my face cam. It just jitters back and forth a little bit because I have ever so slight stick drift, but otherwise, it's basically almost nothing, as you guys can see. But basically I'm gonna turn that off, and so my left stick and my right stick is going to be at a 0-0. Basically a 0-0 for me means that there is going to be absolutely no input delay from when I touch my stick to when it moves on the screen. If you have stick drift on your controller, you probably don't want to have this at a 0 because that's not really going to be that great for you. It's going to cause your character to just randomly start looking around, or you're going to start missing shots, or maybe be too much for you. You don't have to play in a 0-0, but for me, I like to be as close to like real input as possible, and I felt that it's really helped out my gameplay. I went from like, you know, on Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2, from like a 10 to a 7 to a 5 to a 3 to a 0, and I just kind of kept gradually bumping it down. I stayed at a 3 there for a while, and I gradually just bumped it down to a 0, and I was like, okay, this is where I should be at. This feels good to me. So you don't have to do that, but it is up to you. But I'd recommend lowering your dead zone as much as possible to the point where it's not going to mess with you, or your controller's not going to mess up. Your left stick and right stick max, that just can pretty much just stay as is at 99, doesn't really matter. And of course, then your left and right trigger, I just leave this at 0 because the last thing I want is for this to give me any type of resistance, basically, or not like resistance, but like I don't want there to be any sort of delay from when I touch my, you know, bumpers, or my triggers, my bad, to when I can throw like my throwing knife or use my stim shot or something like that. Don't want any of that. Now we're gonna get in here to the aiming side of things, which is gonna deal with my sensitivities. So of course, on aim and on my horizontal and my vertical, I play on a 6/6 sensitivity. This is where a lot of people go wrong. They feel that you have to have a super high sensitivity in order to be able to like look around or be cracked out or something like that. That is not the thing. The best players in the world are playing on like a sub 10 sensitivity. So you have to be able to do obviously what works for you. Some people that works good for them. There's some really cracked out players that, you know, can play on a 15 or whatever. But for me, I feel that whenever I play above, like even like an 8/8 or something like that, I tend to start overcorrecting and overcompensating. My shot gets less accurate, so I kind of bumped it down, and that 6/6 sensitivity allows me to really still move around, turn around on people, as you guys have seen by my gameplays on my channel. I'm still pretty filthy with it, but it also allows me to maintain great accuracy, and that's how I get so many like accusations and stuff like that. So that 6/6 allows me to have that good mobility without allowing me to turn around, compensate, etc. And speaking of overcompensating, now we're taking a look at your ADS sensitivity multiplier. So This right here is huge. So this, normally speaking, like it says right there, will be at a 1.0. You want to dial this down from that 1.0. This will just very much so help out your shot accuracy. So when we take a look there, I have my 6.6 sensitivity and then that 0.8. Now that means that whenever I'm ADS'd in, I get 0.8 of my 6.6 sensitivity. That is huge. You always want to be able to like have a little bit less of your sensitivity when you're aimed in, because I mean, you don't want to be missing those shots. And this is what's going to do it for you. It's going to help give you more of that sticky aim. So it's at a 1.0, turn it down to 0.9, 0.8, something like that, and you should start seeing a benefit to your overall accuracy. Now we're going to take a look here at your sensitivity multiplier. This should just always be at a 1.0. Definitely do not need to mess with this. Doesn't really matter. Vertical aim axis, this is just going to be on standard for anyone that's wondering. Your tac stance sensitivity multiplier is going to be at a 1.0. And then now we're going to move on down here to another fun setting, my aim response curve type. So there's a couple different things in here. So we have standard, linear, and dynamic. But as you guys can't really technically see it, but basically the dynamic description talks about reverse S curve mapping. So basically you have to think about it as like a giant S. So that means like, you know, the S will be like, you know, it'll ramp up, then it'll go down, and it'll help you out essentially with making those fine flick movements. So you don't have to crank your stick over. So you get like your full, you know, let's say 6.6 sensitivity very fast. But also it's going to slow you down, so that way you're not just totally whipping it over and over correcting. So it does really help you out in terms of making your game just feel overall smoother. It allows you to have those fine, you know, flick moves without allowing you to just do a whole bunch of crazy stuff and start turning past people or etc, etc. I believe dynamic is the best way to go. Linear is not bad, and I would definitely say standard is just kind of nothing. You can't really technically go wrong in here, but I do believe dynamic is the best way to play. Now we're gonna go down here. ADS sensitivity multiplier is going to be at a 1.0. ADS sensitivity transition timing should just be on instant. We do not want this to be gradual after zoom, any of that stuff. Just leave it on instant because we're not doing custom sensitivity per zoom. Some people like messing with this. I don't believe it's at all necessary. Just leave that seriously at the 1.0. There's no reason to mess with any of this stuff at all. Target aim assist, I mean, you know, we're on controller, so you have to have that on. Aim assist type is going to be on default. So I actually recently switched back from Black Ops over to default. I know a lot of people were talking about it, so I went ahead and gave it a try, and I felt that default after this most recent update ended up being a little bit better than Black Ops. I felt like my shot was more on. So I basically been trying out default for quite a while now, and I do believe that default will be better than, let's say, precision focusing or Black Ops for that matter. So if you guys are on default, you're doing it right. If you're on Black Ops, you're not necessarily doing it wrong. But I would just definitely give default a try here once again, especially after the more recent updates. Now we're going down here. ADS aim assist type. I mean, our aim assist is just going to be on. I mean, there's no reason to ever turn that off. Some people say aim assist is cheating. It's like, dude, this is just a setting in game, and even the pro players use it. So just gonna use it. Third person ADS correction type is just going to be on assist, and then some of these things down here, motion sensor behavior is off. Then we don't really need to go into the motion sensing behaving settings because we don't really use any of that. Now moving on over here to the gameplay section of the controller, that's going to be our first thing here is going to be the automatic tac sprint. So you want to run this like this exact setting right here. You definitely do not want to run this off or automatic sprint. I will say the only thing you have to be wary of is that if you're using like an akimbo pistol, using a shotgun, automatic tac sprint will try to make you sprint forward when you're trying to move forward. So if you plan on using one of those guns and you're having some issues being able to, like, you know, get your gun up to be able to fire properly, then switch it to automatic sprint or something like that, or you can turn it off. But for everything else, like ARs, SMGs, snipers, you know, it doesn't really matter. Like, you should be good with automatic tac sprint. It's also going to really help save your controller because instead of constantly mashing in that stick, you're just basically pressing it forward. So that also, like, you know, save the, you know, it'll help elongate the controller's life. And I mean, you're not going to get as much stick drift because that's basically how you start, you know, speeding up that process of getting stick drift is by constantly mashing in that stick. So this will help save your controller. Your slide maintains a sprint. You want to have this on, definitely turn that on. Automatic move forward, we don't want that. Tac sprint behavior is on double tap, ground mantle. So basically all these right here, ground mantle, automatic airborne mantle, and automatic ground mantling / hang, we want these off because the last thing we really want to be able to do is in a gunfight of some sort in Warzone to be able to jump shot or anything else like that and then to get just absolutely screwed because we are by a table, like, you know, ledge or something else like that, and your guy just for whatever reason feels like that, now even though it's like way behind him, oh, I should definitely mantle this. So don't want to do that. We just want to eliminate any and all of that sort of behavior. So that means we're going to turn all those things off, so you will not pretty much mantle something unless you physically are meaning to mantle it, which is what we want. Slide behavior / dive behavior should be on tap to slide. That's because there is slide canceling, so that's why we have it on tap to slide. On Warzone, it was like tap to dive, or Warzone 2, my bad. So that's what we had that on there because there was no slide canceling. That was basically the only movement we had, was to be able to dive out of everything. So we had it there, but now it's tap to slide. Should just definitely change that setting. Plunging underwater should just be trigger. Parachute auto deploy, you can have this. It doesn't even matter. You can just turn it on, off, always. I mean, it's up to you. I mean, if you feel like you're gonna splat on the ground, maybe keep that on. Sprinting door bash should just be on. That's just a basic setting. And then ledge climb behavior should be on mantle. And here's now where your ADS site behavior should be hold, which is pretty standard. That's basically never going to be changed. And your change zoom activation, this should just be on the very first setting right here. And then we're gonna go down, and we really don't have to go through too much here, short of the interact / reload behavior, which is going to be on prioritize interact. So this for Warzone is going to be your best setting. If you happen to venture over to multiplayer, because you don't really, I guess, get separate settings from multiplayer, you just change this over to tap to reload, and then when you're going back to Warzone, put on prioritize interact. The reason we have this on prioritize interact is just to be able to pick guns up off the ground very, very fast. It allows you to basically prioritize interacting with the environment, so picking up cash, any type of loot. It just allows you to be able to do that. So instead of from the holding down square to pick up something, I can just tap it. So when I drop in hot to market, you know, that means I can just, you know, open that crate, pick up something, and then jump out the way and try to take people out before they hopefully take me out. If they drop in with like a TYR pistol, I'm in luck. If they drop in with a Renetti, it may not work too well, but you know what I'm saying, like, just prioritize interact is the way to go. Armor plate behavior is going to be on apply all. Definitely want that on there because, you know, as soon as you hold down your button, whether it be Y or triangle, whatever it is, you know, whatever it's for Xbox, I play on PlayStation, so for me it's triangle, but as soon as you hold down that button to apply your plates, if you got 0 plates, it will automatically plate all 3 up, which is huge. Now we're gonna go on down. We don't really need to do pretty much any of this stuff down here. I mean, you can change this to like 1 by 1 grouped. I mean, that doesn't matter. We don't really ever even use C4 ever. And then this is basically it down here. For any guys that are wondering basically what I'm playing with here underneath my graphics display settings, I have an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3080 Ti. I have a dedicated gaming computer and a stream computer, so this is only used for the game. I have a 165 Hz refresh rate monitor, which is that Samsung Odyssey. I play on, of course, full screen, and I play on 1440p, which is huge. 1440 to 1080, you definitely notice a big difference, but we're not really going to go too in depth in here in these settings because everyone's computer settings or computer build specs is totally different. The only thing I will say is that on a general level, pretty much for quality and stuff like that, what you should be concerned with is keeping a majority of this stuff on low, because you don't need to have like all these crazy settings. I'm just not gonna spend too much time in here, but I'll kind of go over it. You can pause it if you really want to. Largely, you should keep a lot of the stuff on low or off, or even sometimes normal. But apart from that, high settings are not the way to go, especially in an FPS game. You want more frames, and it's really not lowering the quality that much. Now let's jump into the view category, which is something a lot of console guys will definitely be taking advantage of, and that is the first thing up here, which is your field of view. So field of view should be on 120. I know there's a rumor going around for a while. I guess I'm not sure if it was TikTok that apparently 120 gives you less aim assist, and so you should play on 119. That is perfectly false. It does not make sense. I consulted with Jay God on it, and it does not, you know, there's no validity to it. Someone on TikTok probably just started that rumor, and people have been talking about it ever since. But play on 120 if you're going to be playing on like 110 plus. Just max it out at 120. It gives you the most round of view around you. What you should also couple that setting with is playing on affected field of view. That basically means that your 120 field of view will not be zoomed into 80 FOV when you go to ADS on your gun. It turns down to just, well, it stays at 120. What that can largely do is, I mean, obviously your iron sights or whatever your sight is a little bit smaller. It also mitigates some of that visual recoil because you're not zoomed way in. It also allows you to still see around you. Very good setting to be able to have. Combining these here together, definitely a must do. So always plan affected, don't plan independent. That is not something you want to do. Weapon field view can be on default, but pretty much don't put this on wide. You put on default. On narrow does not really matter. Third person field of view, put this on 90. Just keep that right there. And of course, my vehicle field of view is just on default. World motion blur, weapon motion blur, definitely want to keep these off. This is not necessary to be able to have. This is just basically to make it harder for you to pick out targets. I know it may look a little bit cool, but having motion, like just have motion blur on, but it doesn't help you in game at all. It basically, you know, makes the game less easy to be able to see people and targets. And like people are like, I didn't see him. It's like, well, if you got motion blur on, like I wonder why. I probably blended in a little bit, you know, especially if you're not running some crazy, you know, skin like with a supernova or something like that, which has like the little halo on it. I mean, it's harder to see some of those military skins you've got motion blur, you know, and they're blending in. Sometimes it's gonna be hard in general. Film grain, you want to turn this down to 0. There's no reason to make this game more grainy than it already is. Don't need that turned up. That's not necessary at all. First person camera movement and third person, just keep this at 50%. The less camera movement, the less screen shake you can have on anything, the better. So keep that at 50. I'd probably keep it at 0 if I could. And then this stuff down here doesn't really matter. Invert flashbang, if you would rather have your screen turn black instead of white for a flashbang, that's totally up to you. I just have this as the normal one. It doesn't really bother me either way. Since I know people are going to ask me about it, my sort of like audio settings here, headphone bass boost is basically just what I have. There's not really like a goated audio setting. Like genuinely, there's just not in this game. In Warzone 1, there was always like, was it boost crunch or boost low, whatever it was that people like to play on. But like, you don't really have any of those settings because the audio in this game is frankly still kind of trash. So whatever you play on is fine. Just don't make something that's muffled. Just use whatever works best for you. There's literally no best setting right here. But now let's get into the interface. So this is going to be something y'all should still be paying attention to. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down here and go to color customization. And we're going to jump in here. So basically you can switch this around. But I have this just on still on default. So that's not really too important. You can customize this if you really want to. We're going to go down here a little bit more to this, the color filter settings. And this is what you should definitely mess with. So your color filter should be on 2. The color filter target should be both. So that basically does both for the world, the interface, stuff like that. And then your world color intensity should be at 100 and your interface color intensity should also be at 100. This game can look pretty dry, pretty bland without these settings turned all the way up or even on in the first place. So that is something you should be taking into consideration. Definitely run these settings. This is a must. And you will see if you don't have this on, you're going to see a big change in the way your game looks. So definitely do that. Now going down here, just a little bit still in the interface tab, we're going to go down to the mini map shape, which is just slightly below here. Basically, this should always be on a square. I know some people may say it doesn't really matter, but if you literally look at the physical shape, which would be behind my face cam in your own settings, if you look at the physical shape, the square is bigger. You know, we want the bigger mini map that helps you see around, and specifically, it's even, you know, good now because there is the red dots on the mini map with people firing unsuppressed. So when you're trying to move around and figure out where people at, if they have an unsuppressed weapon, you know, you just keep your eyes on the mini map a little bit, and the more you can see, obviously, the better, which is really good. My mini map rotation is on. Horizontal compass is on. I mean, though, I really don't think you need this. You could probably turn that off if you really felt like it. Crosshairs, this is another thing that is a little bit personal preference, but I'll show you something that's pretty cool. So if you're gonna have your crosshairs, and so if you're gonna have them like on in the first place, you can turn it off and run exclusively the dot. But if you are gonna have them on, keep them on static so they don't like sort of expand, contract, stuff like that. Just keep them on static. You don't really want any of that shenanigans. And then now we're gonna go down here actually, and we're gonna hit that show more button. So center dot, you definitely want this on, and you want to put this on largest. That's gonna help you totally center on your target. Centering is a huge thing, and that is something that is very overlooked for a lot of players that I'd say are lesser skilled. They don't center properly, and centering basically means that you're always aiming in the general center of, you know, your screen. Like you're not like aiming up high, down below. When you go around a corner, you're aimed at the general center of like basically, you know, chest area of where someone could be coming from. You know, when you're aimed in that general area, if they even slide through the door, all you have to do is bump down a little bit. If they're jump shotting, you just have to bump up a little bit. It's a lot easier to correct for than to be able to be looking down and someone jumps through and then you're basically screwed at that point, because their reaction time, if they're jump shotting through a doorway, they're probably gonna, you know, poop on you. But we want to be able to always be centering, and that largest dot helps even more so. It kind of makes your aim feel a little bit more sticky. So that also probably gets me a few hackuzation comments over on Facebook. well, Facebook is just full of a bunch of idiots. No offense if you're on Facebook, it's just my comments over there are absolutely garbage. It is a cesspool of negativity. All right, well, that's about it. That's all I got for you guys here today. Thank you guys so much for coming through. If you guys enjoyed, give it a like, subscribe, notifications turned on, check out this other video on screen, and I'll see you guys all next time.